The U.S. Pacific Command has detected a missile threat to Hawaii.
Uh-oh.
A missile may impact on land or sea within minutes.
Oh, crap.
This is not a drill.
Oh, my God. We're going to die. Ah! I can just imagine that be some of the things that people talk about in the major oopsie that happened over the past couple weeks over in Hawaii. That's what we're talking about in this episode, number 97 of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. So stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am one of the hosts of today's episode. We are joined again by our very special guest, very special soon-to-be regular co-host, Ian. Good evening, Ian.
Good evening, Curtis. I think at this point, guest has gone long out the window. Good evening, everybody. Evening, let's see, morning. It's evening when we record this, but the show drops in the morning, so which is appropriate?
Well,
I don't know. Hi, y'all.
It all depends on when you listen. You can listen in the morning, you can listen in the afternoon. So let's just cover our bases. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
How about, hi, everybody. This is Ian, Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo. Good to be back. As you can tell, I'm obviously starting off getting the show going in the right direction by being a smart aleck.
Well, it keeps it fun and entertaining, so, that's the way it is. So, but anyways, today we are talking about a major oopsie that happened not too long ago on the big island of Hawaii. So we're going to get to that here in just a second. But first off, you can find all of the stuff that we talk about, as well as some additional links in the show notes of today's episode, which you can find at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/97. That's the number 97. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. The page is at facebook.com/everythinghamradio. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio. And I am on Twitter, and the show is on Twitter at K5CLM. Ian, where can people find you?
People can find me in many places. Email is kilomike4indiakilo.indiaalphanovember. That's km4ik.ian@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook, Ian Khan on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at IanKhan1. And if you care about those sort of things, because there are some ARRL groups there, I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can find me at Ian Khan, Ian Khan or Ian Khan1. I get on the show and I always forget one. Anyway, I'm on LinkedIn too.
Well, your
that's
Twitter,
where you could find me.
Your Twitter is Ian Khan1, so it must be just Ian Khan. So why the one?
Because I think somebody else had taken Ian Khan.
Really?
Actually. So here's a funny story. Totally unrelated to amateur radio, by the way. There is an actor in Hollywood whose name is Ian Khan. He's not horribly famous, but it used to be before I got my license in 2007. Yeah, I'm coming up on 11 years in the hobby. Wow. Mm-hmm. Before I got my license in 2007, I would Google myself from time to time because, you need to know what's out there about yourself. I'll put on my professional hat. I work in IT security for a hospital here in Atlanta, and you need to know what's out there in the ether sphere, if you will, about yourself. So I used to, throw my name into Google every now and again, and the only thing I would find was this guy out in Hollywood who was an actor, and I think he got the Twitter handle before I did. And of course, then I got my ham license. And now you can find me by my, you Google my name and you get my ham license. And many, many years ago, I wrote a real brief paper I was experimenting with some older versions of Linux. And I wrote a paper on how to get N1MM Logger. This is in the old days of N1MM Logger, the original version. How to get it running on Linux using Wine, which is WINE is an acronym that it's a recursive acronym. It means wine is not an emulator, is what the acronym stands for. But it essentially allows you to run Windows programs under Linux. And I wrote this paper on it's real short. It's a couple 3 pages, and I gave it to somebody, and that somebody posted it on the internet somewhere, and now it's out there for the universe to see. And if you Google my name, you find my ham license, and you find that document and a whole bunch of stuff on this actor. So that's a long, boring story of why there's a 1 after my on the Twitter feed.
I just did that. I actually haven't done it in a while, and just out of curiosity, I did it. The first thing that pops up, I'm the executive vice president at Taylor Corporation in the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul area.
That's a heck of a commute.
Yeah.
From the Dallas, Texas area to Minneapolis.
And then the second one comes up. It says that I'm an actor.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm an actor. I'm known for Beauty Queen Butcher in 1991.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Who knew?
I was 12 years old.
Are you still collecting your royalties?
I wish. Of course, then number 3 comes up with my Facebook profile. And then the 4th or the 5th one is actually the About Me page on this podcast. So
there you go.
Top 10. That's good.
You are your own top 10. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. So, but anyways, like I said, we are talking about a major goof that happened, and we're talking about the ballistic missile test that occurred in Hawaii, and I'm actually going to pause right now for us. Y'all won't hear anything, but I'm actually going to play the audio that was played that people heard on the alert system there in Hawaii. So hold on, y'all. Listen to this, and we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about it.
The U.S. Pacific Command has detected a missile threat to Hawaii. A missile may impact on land or sea within minutes. This is not a drill. If you are indoors, stay indoors. If you are outdoors, seek immediate shelter in a building. Remain indoors well away from windows. If you are driving, pull safely to the side of the road and seek shelter in a building or lay on the floor. We will announce when the threat has ended. This is not a drill. Take immediate action measures.
All right, so, as you can tell, y'all can imagine. I can imagine just what that would be like if all of a sudden my weather radio started going off and saying, hey, guess what? The Pacific Command has issued a warning because there's a ballistic missile coming to you, and you need to take shelter. Can you imagine what that would be?
I'd be seriously worried if PACCOM issued a warning for me here in Georgia. That would really be a serious. But seriously, that was, that kind of goof. I was in the Air Force for several years. I fixed airplanes. I didn't do anything, anything major, anything spectacular. But those are the kinds of mistakes that commanders have nightmares about because you've now sent an entire population into panic.
Right.
Intent notwithstanding, we were testing our early warning system or testing our communication system notwithstanding, somebody somewhere hit a wrong button and panicked the entire population of that island.
Well,
that's bad. That's not good.
Yeah, and just because of this one little error, the emergency management coordinator for the state of Hawaii resigned. And from what I understand, he'd been in the EM for quite a while.
Yeah.
I
saw that as well. Like 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, it was like, what was his name? Mr. Miyagi or something like that? I think it was what his name was. No, seriously, I think that's actually what his name was. It was Mr. Miyagi.
Well, when you see a mistake like this, this is the kind of mistake that getting on the news and saying, hey, we're sorry, we made a mistake, we didn't mean to send that message out, just isn't enough. There's got to be accountability, and for better or for worse, this is how the public expects that accountability these days. And, whether the EC for the Big Island of Hawaii really was responsible for that alert going out or not,
The buck stops there.
Harry Truman had the sign on his desk. The buck stops here.
Mm-hmm.
He was the last man in the chain of command, the guy at the top of the chain of command. And that's heavy lies the head that wears the crown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the accountability comes from.
It makes me kind of wonder because, how this actually happened. Because I remember reading in one of the articles I was reading about where it said that the best part about it was that the amateur radios that were there had actually just finished a drill 2 hours prior.
Right, I saw that.
So they knew exactly what to do. So it's like, was there something left over? Was it like, was there a message in queue to be sent out for that in the training exercise? And when it flipped over back to live, somebody actually pressed the button or the announcement went live or something like that. What happened? How can that happen? I can understand like an Amber, like a like a code red or something like that. I don't know if y'all have that there, but here in my job, we're responsible for the code red system here, which is basically just like a call down tree. So anytime there's a disaster or a thunderstorm warning, or like in our case, the county that I work in has a nuclear power plant. So if something were to happen something would happen there, then that would be one of my responsibilities if I was working would be to activate that call down system.
Right.
And but this wasn't one of those. This was a national what's that? What's that thing?
The state civil defense.
Yeah.
The state emergency. It came out of the Hawaii Department of Defense, didn't it? At least it looked like, based on some of the shots in that video, that the emergency coordinators were all based out of the Hawaii Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
So, state agency level kind of things. It'll be well and thoroughly investigated. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll make the results of their investigation public,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They may do the investigation and keep that behind closed doors, and maybe justifiably so. There's something to be said for not showing your hand, not giving out all of the failings of your system,
mm-hmm.
Because you have to maintain trust in the system. And I'm sure there are a number of places where there have been public failings like this that were investigated, and it was left with whoever the fall guy was. That person's resignation was all the public saw.
Mm-hmm.
But behind the scenes, there were some significant changes made. Significant actions taken. Both for accountability and to correct the system.
Yeah, some kind of checks and balances or something like that. Yeah. Can you imagine what you would feel like if you were the person that sent that message?
Apparently, the person that the public is saying, or that the state of Hawaii publicly is saying sent that message, doesn't have a job anymore as the emergency coordinator.
Right, but more than likely it was somebody working under him.
Right.
It was somebody that now, because of them, this person doesn't have a job anymore, and the thousands, 100,000 people, or however much lives on the state of Hawaii that got that message. The panic that ensued, all that, and it was like 30 minutes before a message was sent out saying, "Hey, this was a mess up on our part. There's no missile coming."
Right.
And it takes what I think I saw like somewhere like 11 to 12 minutes or something like that for a missile to come from North Korea to Hawaii.
Yeah, they said something like that in the video.
Mm-hmm.
You've got less than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If the North Koreans get jittery
mm-hmm.
and push a button.
Right.
However, let's shift gears a little bit, because the end result of, or one of the positive outcomes, and I'm going to turn and put on a selfish hat. One of the positive outcomes of this is amateur radio got a lot of good exposure mm-hmm. as being, we are the lifeline when something like this really happens.
Yeah.
And you said it. The local I don't remember if they said it was Aries or Races had just finished a drill right before this whole thing happened. They were able to step right in and start taking over, providing communication and start taking traffic because they had just finished doing this.
Mm-hmm.
The video that you linked to, which I'm sure will be in the show notes for everybody else that hadn't already seen it, really did a fabulous job of painting amateur radio in a very positive light. And I thought, and really playing amateur radio up as the, when that pulse comes and your cell phones don't work and broadcast radio doesn't work and your telephone, if you still have a landline, your telephones don't work because all of that relies on infrastructure that potentially, likely would be destroyed in an attack of this sort. The guy, at least the folks still running the boat anchor gear that doesn't have the transistors in it. We got to be honest. I love my K3, but if an EMP goes off, that thing's just a big paperweight.
Only if it's on though. If it's turned off, I don't think it'll affect it. I may be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure that if it's not on, it's not going to affect it.
No. Hopefully we don't ever find out.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least the guys running the boat anchors, if something like this happens, there's an EMP, those guys are going to be able to stick a coat hanger in the antenna jack on their radio and hook it up to a power supply, if it's not one of the older boat anchors that has its own power supply built into it, and turn it on, connect it to power and turn it on, and away they go, passing traffic like nothing ever happened without skipping a beat.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree with that to an extent. But right now, let's take a break and hear from West Mountain Radio, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you why I don't totally agree with that. So stick around, y'all. We'll be right back. West Mountain Radio has recently released their third-generation power gate, the Epic Power Gate. It uses advanced technology to achieve a very low, 0.05 volts to be exact, power loss, and has a maximum flexibility to charge modern batteries. It features a solid and durable construction in an aluminum case, and includes mounting holes for convenient and secure use in mobile units. It uses Anderson power pole connectors that are standard on all West Mountain Radio products. The Epic Power Gate is a 12-volt backup power system rated at 40 amps continuous from either a power supply or a battery. Any equipment that is connected through it will instantly switch to battery during a loss of power. Not only does the Epic Power Gate act as a backup power switch, it also has a battery charge controller, so your batteries will remain charged when hooked up to a power source. The Epic Power Gate can charge all chemistries of batteries and supports a smart charging program for lead-acid and lithium-ion batteries charging up to 10 amps. As an added bonus to this iteration of the Power Gate line, the Epic Power Gate also has a solar charge controller. If you would like to know more about the Epic Power Gate or any other item that West Mountain Radio has, go to everythinghamradio.com/WMR and make sure you get your free USB port monitor with your purchase. Alright, y'all, we are back. Myself, K5CLM, and my wonderful, not guest co-host, Ian.
Hi there, everybody.
Before I left that cliffhanger, as Ian told me during the break, yes, I agree with you for the most part that that video that went national, if not international, because it was done by NBC, painted amateur radio in a good light. Yes, they had some good interviews with some of the amateur radio operators out there. They showed how things could be done, what people could talk to, and so on and so forth. The one thing I noticed, and let me know if you noticed this as well. The one thing I noticed was that everybody in the video was probably 60 or greater. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah.
And it's like, so it talks about how good amateur radio is, and one of the people even said that he was retired.
Yeah.
So, in a way, that portrays ham radio as a OM's hobby, as an old man's hobby or a retired person's hobby.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So, we're always talking about how we need younger people in the hobby. And, myself, not so much included. Of course, I was when I got in the hobby, but not so much anymore. But, the one thing I wish they would have had in there, I wish they would have talked to somebody that was a little younger.
Let me ease your ego there a little bit. You're younger than me by several years.
Well, I probably have more gray hair than you do.
You probably have more hair than I do.
Well, yeah, that I'll go with. Of course, if your profile picture on Skype is any view of how many gray hairs you have, I definitely have a whole lot more gray hair than you do.
Oh yeah, but that's an old picture.
Yeah, but even when I was,
anyway,
how old were you in that picture? Let me ask you that. How old were you in that picture?
Let's see. I took that picture the last time I was out on a job search. So that picture, I was maybe 42 or 43 in that picture.
So you're still at least 4 years older than I was, or that I am now, and I'm more salt than pepper. So
I will admit that for the portions of my gene pool that maintained any hair past their mid 40s, they aged it very, very, very well. My grandmother, my mom, on my mother's side, my grandmother was 100 when she passed away, and she was barely salt and pepper. My mother, I don't know if I want to share this one or not. Well, I don't want. My mother passed away 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
and
that's right.
She was just going salt and pepper, and she was in her mid-70s or early 70s. So from the going gray perspective, I come from very good solid stock. On the other hand, the men on both sides of my family are all bald or balding.
Well,
it's a double edged. But
in the dragging this side topic just a little bit farther here. I'm so sorry we went so far off topic here, y'all.
Yeah,
but I think most of the time the hair gene pool or the hair gene or whatever comes from the female side, the female parent. So that's probably why you still have hair. As far as me, I started going gray at 17.
Wow.
Yeah, I was sitting in one of the local hair cutting places here.
Wasn't it?
It was. I was sitting there it was like halfway through my senior year, and I was getting a haircut before I went back to school after Christmas. And the lady that's cut my hair, she says, "Ooh, wow, look, here's a gray hair." I'm like, pull it out.
She yanked it, and 6 more grew back in its place.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So,
anyway, all right.
Okay,
all right. Let's get off let's get off the tangent.
Yeah, reel this back in here.
To your point, yeah, the video. Everybody in the video was older, was senior citizen, was retired. I don't want to use the term senior citizen because just because you're retired doesn't necessarily mean. 67, 65, 67, 70 is young these days. But there you could easily get the impression that you had to be a retiree to get into this hobby. And we get that a lot in the media, but I wonder, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. I wonder if part of that is due to the fact that, if you're doing a drill like this at noon on a Tuesday afternoon, I'm at work. Let's see, you don't work, you work night shift. You work like noon to midnight, don't you? Mm-hmm. Or 4 to midnight, something like that, don't you?
12,
so you're at work. Yeah. So you're at work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
Those of us that are younger and are still in the workforce aren't available to do these drills during the middle of the week, during the day. That said, you might get an incorrect impression about getting into the hobby. And whenever I talk to people about getting into the hobby, and one of the big questions is, well, how old do you have to be? My answer is you have to be old enough to understand the material well enough to pass the test. Mm-hmm. We do my club, and I've said this before here, the North Fulton Amateur Radio League, my club does a lot of work with school-aged kids. Elementary school kids, middle school kids, high school kids. And we work very diligently on encouraging young people to come into the hobby. Mm-hmm. And we do schools. We work with both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And we show them how, it's not just an old people's hobby. And there are things that as a youngster you can do. And a lot of what we do is around some of the digital, you and I have talked about digital modes before, because kids are so tech focused. The youth today are so tech oriented. A lot of it is in the context of digital modes, where we're involved in the schools, we're involved in science curricula, and I've talked about the clubs. We've got one that's through the science class with one of our schools. We've got another one that's the school itself is a science and technology, is a STEM magnet school. So we've got some club members that are working with that school and trying to get those guys' club kicked off and get that off the ground. So, that's an avenue. And we try to show how it can lead to careers, not just in radio and mm-hmm. broadcast. There are a number of different directions that you can go. We've got broadcasters and electrical engineers, but we've got astrophysicists too, mm-hmm. and astronauts and electricians and carpenters and folks like me that work in the various aspects of IT, folks like you that work in public service. There are all kinds of different directions that you can take the hobby, that can help you find your passion and help lead you down a potential career path. And that's just, I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent too, but
not really, no.
That's where my club and a lot of the clubs here in the Atlanta area really work to get youth in, because we all recognize the hobby is getting older, and the face we're presenting is that what you talked about, that we're an old person's hobby and we're a retiree's hobby, and excuse me, I can't always get on the air as much as I'd like to do, but I do things with. When my son was in Cub Scouts, I did things with his den specifically, particularly around Jamboree on the Air to get the kids exposed. I have offered, still trying to get over this cough and sinus infection that I had back in December. Really annoying.
Yeah, I bet.
I've offered to help with, to do things with his Boy Scout troop. And if I ever get any takers, well, I'll be happy to show them. We did it. My club did an event during National Parks on the Air. There is a national park here in the Atlanta area, the Chattahoochee Outdoor National Recreation Area, that has it follows the Chattahoochee River through Atlanta, so it has, excuse me, probably half a dozen different stations that are disconnected areas, but it's all the same park. And we activated one of them. Is just, one of them's an old house that looks out over the river, and we activated that national park during National Parks on the Air, and I invited all the scouts to come out and see it, and a couple of them came out, and you sit them down in the chair and you put the cans on their ears and you get them on the air, and that's how you hook them. And I know, I talk about the Atlanta area a lot because that's what I know. There are clubs all over the country in the U.S. that are doing these kinds of things. So, we know. We got to get a younger face on the hobby, and we've got to bring down the median age. And we work hard at it. And I think, I think we're doing a good job. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. But I think, for the most part, we do a good job of trying to get younger people in and getting younger people in and active.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think that's a lot of how, this hobby needs to move forward, because it's like, there's so many older hams, and the younger hams are not always that young. They're in their 20s sometimes, but it's still a pretty, like you said, the median age is still pretty high. So it's like, what do we have to do to lower that median age? But honestly, it might not be anything that we really can do to a certain extent, because it's like, when you're in high school, you have other things to do. You have football games and baseball games and, band and, all that stuff. Girls, for all the boys out there. And then you get into college and you're cramming for tests and, taking a heavy study load and all that good stuff. So it's still a...
Wait. You studied in college?
You didn't?
I didn't know I was supposed to. Kidding. Obviously kidding.
But, it's like, when they're that young, it's hard to keep them entertained, I guess, maybe. And especially nowadays where, the internet's so prevalent. What's the word I'm looking for?
Prevalent?
Yeah, that word. Yeah, that word. When with the internet and cell phones and, chat apps and things like Skype that we're doing this interview or this podcast episode with, that you can talk around the world. And then, people getting on multiplayer games, there's people from all over the world in there. What is the pull to get the kids off of a video game or off of a computer or off of their cell phones to use a radio that, costs upwards of several hundred, if not $1,000, that can talk around the world?
I got a transmitter sitting on my desk. Cost me $20.
But unless you use the internet, you can't talk around the world in that.
Sure, I can.
How is
it's
that?
It's a quarter watt CW transmitter. If I've got the right propagation, I can talk around the world on it.
True.
It's a 210 tunas. The 210 tunas kit that I built as part of a club build several years ago. I was actually Elmering a young man that's a friend of mine. He's about to turn 15. So he was 11 or 12 at the time. He's got his license. I helped him get his license. And he's in a home situation where putting up antennas is an unreasonable challenge. So, he doesn't have a whole lot of on the air, but, and he likes to do the tinkering and the soldering and the building. So, the hobby isn't all about necessarily getting on the air. I talk to people and I listen to other podcasts or people that they have the license so they can do the experimental stuff, so they can build the radios and play with the gear and try things. And because one of the things we're supposed to be doing is experimenting and advancing the art of radio science. They have their licenses and they spend their days, inhaling solder smoke, building kits and designing circuits. And maybe they get on the air every once in a while. But their main thrust or their main interest is building. So if you like tinkering and working with your hands, that's a great way. Hey, look what this hobby can give you. Look at the universe of kits that are out there that you can build and that you can learn from, and you can learn how to design circuits by building these things up and learning how those circuits work. And they're QRP kits, and they cost $15, $20, $30. Not a lot of money. And you learn Morse code. So you get you get a microbit X, or you get a 210 tunas, or you get some of the other QRP transceiver, CW transceiver kits, and maybe they're rock bound. So you get the crystal with them, and you get a set of crystals, and you play with the crystals, and you see what the effects of changing the crystals are, and it affects your frequencies. So we know how that works. But these kits that give you the ability to build a piece of gear block by block and test it and learn how it works. And get your hands dirty, and always remember to grab the proper end of the soldering iron.
That's
our safety briefing for the night. Always grab the correct end of the soldering iron. Right there is another aspect for getting youngsters into the hobby. Yeah.
Well,
another avenue.
And I see that, yes, the DIY thing, the kit thing, yes, that is a way to get kids in. But on the flip side of that, in order to have that type of thing, or in order for a young person to know about that kind of thing, you have to have the opposite end of the spectrum, and you have to have an Elmer. And I know around here, locally, a lot of times those things are few and far between that actually know stuff about stuff like that. I don't know how it is elsewhere, but I imagine just like getting young people into the hobby, there's that same issue about having members be Elmers to newcomers.
And you know what? I will admit to probably being a little spoiled in that area. Atlanta is a ham-rich area, the whole metro area. There are hundreds of hams in this area. And my club, at least, and I blow my club's horn an awful lot on this podcast, and I know that. And if people get tired of listening to me talk about the North Fulton Amateur Radio League, well, that's my level. That's where my experience comes from. So, you talk about what you know. But we kind of take the attitude that part of our job as hams is Elmering that next generation that's coming up. And so we take special pride in being Elmers and in being willing to help people. There are, and I'm gonna address a little bit else your concern. And again, Atlanta, very rich area for this. So I may be living kind of in the fool's paradise, if you will. Maker spaces are a great place for the maker movement. Where you can find, some of that Elmering. Maybe it's not directly radio related, but maybe there's, a maker that does other electronics projects, or, other kinds of related, allied kinds of things that are related to radio, but aren't directly radio and can serve as that fertile soil, if you will, to help us get more youngsters and more people, and not just kids, adults, younger adults, young adults in their 20s and early 30s, get into the hobby as well. And when we say we're looking for younger people, I hope we're not just talking about what the league defined, what the ARRL defines as youth, as anybody under 18, even folks that are electrical engineering majors in college and they get interested through their engineering department radio club, or folks that, stumble into it, when you're in your early, you're getting into your career and you find a guy at work that's a ham, or, as what happened in my case, my father-in-law. I had a little bit of exposure as a teenager when I was babysitting for a family that the dad is still a ham. And then my father-in-law, I stumbled into it again 10 years later. But, still, I happened to fall into the company of the right people that got me into the hobby, deliberately or otherwise.
So, I have a challenge for each and every one of y'all that are listening out there, okay? My challenge is this month, and last month I did a little question on what y'all were going to do in the coming year, and I got a few emails about it. But I want to challenge each and every one of y'all to answer this question. Okay, it can be an email if that's what you want, but what I would really like, because I want to put these answers in a future podcast episode. So first off, before I tell you what the question is, let me tell you how you can answer it. Of course, you can answer it in an email. Just send me an email, k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. Or what I would prefer and what I would really like, you can either record a message on your phone, just using, like if you have an iPhone, you can use the voice recorder and email it to me. You could do it on your computer with the simple audio recorder thing. Or you can go to my website, everythinghamradio.com. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a button that says send voicemail. And it's, you have to kind of read it sideways because it goes up the side of the page. But you can go there, send me a voicemail, and the question that I want y'all to answer is, what can we do as Elmers, or what can we do to help bring in those younger people? What have you done, maybe, or what can be done? That's what I want y'all to answer. So please send me emails, send me voice messages, preferably, or just go to that voicemail link on the side of my page. So one more thing that I wanted to talk about, about this video. One of the things they mentioned in there was that people get into amateur radio for the MCOM side of things. And I know from personal experience that a lot of the people that I've helped get their license, that was one of the reasons, or the major reason, that they got into amateur radio was for some kind of MCOM reason, whether they were working with the Skywarn team, whether they were in my club that I helped start, which is based around disaster relief. So there is a big portion of new hams that get their license for MCOM reasons. But there's also a lot more out there that you can do in this hobby. And we're going to talk about those when we come back after we hear from one of the great Elmers, Dan Romanchik, KB6NU. So stick around, y'all. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Dan, KB6NU, author of the No Nonsense Amateur Radio License Study Guides. My study guides have helped thousands get their license or upgrade to general class or extra class, and they can help you too. What makes them unique is my no-nonsense style. I don't bamboozle you with a lot of text. Instead, I give you just what you need to know in a simple, straightforward way that's designed to help you pass the test. One reader even told me, your study guide explained in a couple of paragraphs topics that the license manual needed a couple of pages to cover. Another wrote, the clarity and simplicity of your descriptions blew the license manual away. My study guides are available in paperback, in a variety of ebook formats, and even as audiobooks. Get your copy today. Go to kb6nu.com/ETHR for more info. Thanks.
Hey y'all, we are back with K5CLM Curtis and...
This is Ian, KM4IK.
Hey, we're getting better at that.
We are. I'm not missing my cues anymore.
Exactly. So in the last...
I can be trained.
Maybe I'll let you take lead next time. I'll be the co-host. You can be the host.
let's not get too froggy now there, brother.
Okay, so last segment we segued into other things that can do in the hobby. And a while back, actually on the day that I adopted my 4 kids, I put out a post with a whole big list of things that you can do in amateur radio other than just talking. And a bunch of the stuff I've talked about, and I actually need to use this thing to figure out what I want to talk about next. But anyways, so, first off, I think probably the most common thing you're going to hear is talking, right? I mean, talking locally with your friends on the radio, talking with your parents or your spouse or, your club mates on a local repeater, or even, long distance, talking to people that you don't know, talking to those that are on the other side of the world. That was one of the things that I, that really got my blood flowing. The first time I went to a field day and got on the radio and talked to somebody in, like Hawaii or Europe or Africa. I think I had one like South America. And we even actually had one, now I think I've told y'all this before, but when the Olympics were in Australia, 15, 20 years ago or whatever, my club was out camping, and we set up a station for our club to use during the camping trip, and it was during the Olympics, and they had a special event station, and we actually talked to them on 10 meters. Wasn't very good.
I think South Korea has a couple of special event stations going during the duration of the Winter Games that are going on now, and then the Paralympic Games that are a little later in the winter.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, top thing probably on anybody's list is talking. Talking around the world, talking to your neighbor. That's one of the thing, and that even goes one step further on whether you're talking on voice, whether you're talking on Morse code, or digital modes, or even like microwave. There's so much that you can do just with talking.
I will tell you that when I first got licensed, my commute was 17 miles each way, I think, but it was minimum 45 minutes to an hour because of traffic, and the repeater saved my soul.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
because I had people to talk to on that, minimum 45 minute to an hour commute every afternoon on the way home. It wasn't quite that long in the morning. It was because the traffic patterns were a little bit different, but even in the morning, it wasn't just me sitting, beeping and creeping along. It was talking to people and, sharing ideas and even talking about the football game. I developed some very good friendships, with a couple of the hams that went to, let's say I went to the University of Georgia and these guys went to the University of Florida. And if you're familiar at all with football in the southeastern United States, the Georgia-Florida is one of the larger, nastier rivalries. And
kind of like Texas and OU.
Exactly. And unfortunately, one of them became a silent key 4 or 5 years ago, at least. And this was the guy. You talk about Elmering. This guy was the Elmer's Elmer. He was always quick to jump in and help somebody figure something out, and help the new guys answer their questions and get their feet under them and get them going. Wonderful, wonderful guy, despite having gone to Florida. But he. Like I said, he became a silent key a few years ago, and the other one retired and moved to North Carolina. Those were a couple of good friends of mine. But just the ability to have conversations about whatever on my commutes makes the commute around. Not everybody's got this problem, but in Atlanta, we're famous around the world for horrendous traffic, and it makes the commutes tolerable.
Yeah, when my first job out of college, I'll say this first, and then I'll go backwards a little bit. But my first job out of college, I worked in downtown Dallas, and I lived in part of the time I worked there, I lived in a small town about 45, 50 miles or so from downtown, from the job. And if I would leave I had to be there at 8. And if I would leave at before 6:40 in the morning, I would get there like 7:30. If I left after 6:45, I wouldn't get there until 8:15. But if I left,
we get that.
If I left between 6:40 and 6:45, I'd get there about 7:50 or so, just enough time to park and get in, get there and get up to my desk by 7:50.
Yeah.
But I mean, just that 5-minute window made all the difference in the world. And like you, I had my radio in my car, and was able to make those contacts. But back up a little bit, when I was in college, I went to college in Phoenix, and I lived basically on one side of Phoenix, on the northeast side, just outside of Glendale, and my school was just north of one of the downtowns of Phoenix, and it was about a 45-minute commute or so, especially if I went the freeways. But there, and I know they had this elsewhere as well, but there they would have a rush hour net, rag chew net. And all the other people that were stuck in traffic like me were, chewing the fat, talking about stuff, all that good stuff. And like you said, it makes the commute manageable. So
certainly preserves your sanity when you're sitting there breathing somebody else's exhaust fumes, and you're going, 6 inches an hour kind of thing.
Right.
And any of us that are in major metropolitan areas that drive have been in that situation before.
Which is why I live in the country. My traffic jams consist of a accident or a tractor.
You live in a state where you can still get country and still be in proximity to a metropolitan area. For me to get country, I almost have to go to Tennessee.
Well, yeah, Okay, so
I do dream every time my wife and I go up to the mountains, and we see we go to one of the little small towns up in the mountains, and we see 9 acres in a ranch style house, for not much more than what we paid for our half acre here in the city. I go, oh my God, 9 acres! Do you know how many towers I could put up on that?
Yeah.
And my wife just rolls her eyes.
Yeah, you could have one awesome, multi-beam phase system.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on.
Dream. It's good to have dreams.
Hey, it might come true one day. You never know.
Never know.
So, okay, moving on. So, we talked about this a little earlier, doing little low power DIY kits, talking like on a quarter watt on CW, or even 10 watts on single sideband, like you can do on the KX2. I think it's a KX2, isn't it? KX2 that does single sideband.
Mm-hmm. Well, the KX2 and the KX3 do single sideband.
Okay. But doing stuff like that, doing QRP, and actually talked about that in episode number 60. So if you want to learn more about that, you can listen to that episode. Another thing, QSL cards. This was one of the things that probably isn't so popular now, but it was, back 20 plus years ago. You would make a contact with somebody and you would exchange postcards. And to an extent it is now, especially if you do things like the expeditions or a contest or, something like that, or you get that special somebody that you don't have, you can exchange QSL cards. And there's people that have them on their walls, they have big binders of them, and stuff like that. They have, special events will have special QSL cards. So, there's so much that is possible in this hobby, and that's just a few of them. So
I will tell you, I like to contest, and I've talked about that here, and that's another one of the things that we can do. I invariably, after each contest, and I put on my QRZ page, that I upload all my contacts to Logbook of the World, but I put on my QRZ page, hey, thank you if you worked me in this contest on this date, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Everything's in Logbook of the World. If you want a QSL card, here's how to get a QSL card out of me, and I will gladly reply to you. And in fact, I've got 2 bureau packs and a couple of other random cards sitting on my desk that I need to take down to the shack and process. I love getting QSL cards. It's getting harder and harder to be consistent about using them because postage is getting so expensive. Mm-hmm. And there are kind of gentleman's protocols that we all follow around sending QSL cards. And I'm not going to get into that now, but QSLing, as wonderful as it is, can be pricey. But the beauty of the QSL card is, for a lot of for a lot of us, they're brags about our stations or our families or something in our lives that we're proud of. For some people, they use them to provide a little piece of a look into, and this is particularly for the DX cards, for the long distance cards, for the international cards. It's a look into another country's geography or culture or history, or there's so much you can do with them, and they're such a wonderful piece of the hobby. And I hate that it's becoming so expensive, because I think the time and effort to send the cards, there's a personal contact, beyond the fact that yes, it's radio, it's all personal contact, right? But the QSL card, you can write, people will jot handwritten notes on them, or excuse me, just something, and it just provides that little extra personal touch, that little extra something that makes the hobby so worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So that's my soapbox on QSL cards. I'll get down there. I got to go order some more. In fact, I think I've got 4 left on my stack, so I've got to go order some more.
Well, and going along with the QSL cards is the contesting. Contesting, special events, awards, stuff like that. There's awards for, if you worked every state in the U.S., or if you worked 100 different countries, or a certain number of grid squares and stuff like that. We had the national parks on the air. We have the parks on the air now. The NASA on the air that's going on this year. The
Square Chase. The Grid Square Chase.
Yeah, the Grid Square Chase. All these things are going on, simultaneously. And if that's what you like to do, or that's what you're interested in, then by all means do it. The contesting is, really starting to ramp up, from what I understand. Right? It's really getting there, right?
Yeah, so this past weekend was the CQ Worldwide RIDI contest. The North America NAQP? Yeah, the North America QSO party was a few weeks ago. We're starting to run into the heart of contesting season. My favorite contest, but I'm biased, and I own the bias, is the Georgia QSO party. That's the one big contest a year that I make sure work knows I'm not available to be on call that weekend, and the wife knows don't make any big plans that she needs me that weekend because I'm not available. I'm going to be operating in the Georgia QSO party. But I like that. I like all the international, the ARRL contests and the CQ contests. They're a lot of fun. It's a good way to work a lot of parts of the world really quickly. If you're competitive, if you've got a little competitive spirit, and you're into amateur radio, contesting in radio sport is a great way to kind of satisfy that competitive urge. And it helps you, believe it or not, hone your skills for if you want to get into MCOM later, or you want to get more into Aries and races, because one of the big aspects of contesting is passing specific sets of information quickly, efficiently, in horrible conditions because the bands are so crowded. So there's a direct link and a direct tie between radio sport, between contesting, and the MCOM work that we do. So let's tie that back to where we started with the alert in Hawaii within the last couple of weeks. So, there are a lot of aspects of the hobby that touch on each other.
Yeah. Well,
but I love contesting. It's fun.
I read a post on QRZ, and I don't know if you read this or not, and actually did a post on it, a blog post on it last week. And the person that wrote the blog post, and he actually wrote it on his blog as well, but he was saying that he believes that contesting is like a cancer, and that it's killing the hobby.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah, exactly, and that's that was my whole point of the blog post that I wrote. He said that the quick exchange of where you are and what your signal report is not making a contact. It's not it's not his definition of making contact, and therefore it shouldn't be counted towards like things like worked all states or something like that, or and he goes on to talk about the awards and stuff. He says that when I make a contact, I want to be able to talk to somebody and say, hey, how's the weather over there, or how'd you get there, or whatever, especially on like de-expeditions and stuff. But he talks about stuff like that as contesting as killing the hobby, and in some ways, I can see how he thinks that, because I know when I was able to actually hear something on my radio. And as I look at the, contesting calendar, there's pretty much some kind of contest going on every weekend of the month, or every weekend of the year, it seems, with the exception of a few. So
I can respect his position. I can respectfully disagree as well. But this goes back to, I think, a thread that goes through everything I talk about, at least. What do you want out of the hobby? If what you want out of the hobby is you want the rag chew, and I like rag chewing. When I get on, when I have time to go down and get on and turn on the radio on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night after my son's gone to bed, I like a good rag chew. And to me, that's fun, and it's great to get to meet other people and really get to find out a lot about them, like this person. I also enjoy the quick hit contact. I also enjoy the contesting aspect. So it's what do you want to get out of the hobby? What makes the hobby fun, and what draws you into it? If this person's idea of a contact is, I'm going to sit and talk for 20 minutes and get to know you, that's awesome. Because he's using our bandwidth, and he's making friends, and he's keeping things going, and he's enjoying the hobby that way. But please respect those folks that enjoy the contest aspect and like the quick hit, and want to chase the paper and want to get the awards,
right?
Because to somebody else, that's what makes the hobby fun and interesting. Is you have a target, you have a goal, you have something to achieve, and it's tangible and measurable, and it's measurable by that piece of paper that you get to hang on the wall, and those endorsements you get to put on it, or like in the case of DXCC is a perfect example, or Worked All States is a perfect example. You get a different piece of paper for getting Worked All States in phone, CW, digital. If you do it mixed, that's another. And then if you do it on multiple bands, you start getting the endorsements.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, if y'all want to read about what more I said on this, I will have a link to the blog post in the show notes. But let's move on. We're getting kind of long here, and I'm sure my wife wants me to come inside because we need to get to bed because we have an early morning in the morning. So I'm just going to kind of run through these some real quick, and I'll have a link to this blog post as well. But things like running a repeater you can do. If you don't have the money to buy that $1,000 HF repeater, there's other ways you can do it. You can talk around the world on like Echolink. You have an app on your phone that you can talk on other repeaters or to repeaters or other people around the world. Things like we talked about earlier, the DIY, building your own radios, building your own antennas, making circuits like they do over on the Ham Radio Workbench podcast. They make antenna analyzers and dummy loads and meters and all that. Stuff like that is great. If that's what you're into, by all means. Things like community service. We talked about...
Excuse me.
No problem. We talked about IMCOM at the beginning of this, but, going along with that, you have your RACES, your ARIES, the CERT teams, things like doing marathons and bike races and stuff like that. You have Skywarn assisting the National Weather Service. There's a bunch of stuff, and there's a bunch more that I'm not going to go into, but you can check the link that I'm going to put in the show notes for other ideas if you have problems getting younger people or getting people in general in because they don't know what they do. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is kind of a bit of sad news. I know that y'all have heard me in the past talking about my good friend Kale over at Ham Radio 360. He's one that him and George and Jeremy are the ones that got me the mic that I'm using for Christmas one year. And Kale was one of the big reasons that I started, that I went with a podcast. Well, a couple days ago, Kale put a message on his website talking about how he started, how he became an amateur radio operator, how he started his podcast back in 2014, and that it wasn't supposed to go any more than 5 or 10 episodes, and it ended up going 90 plus episodes over a span of 4 years with over 750,000 downloads. He is a awesome guy, has an awesome voice, easy to listen to, and with his background in radio, it doesn't surprise me. But anyways, he goes on to say that he took his break in the last quarter of last year and spent 3 months not doing it. Then he came back the first part of January and released 3 episodes. And now he's decided that he is going to discontinue entirety the 306 or Ham Radio 360 podcast. The website will stay, hamradio360.com. It will stay up. The podcast feeds will stay up. The Workbench show has moved off to its own feed and its own website, which you can find at hamradioworkbench.com. The Field Radio podcast has its own website and its own feed. So basically the mother program, the Ham Radio 360 show, is no more. And in some ways, I can totally understand why he did this. But it's sad for me to see a great podcast going to the wayside.
And we wish him well in his in his future endeavors. He's got very young children, and that's part of his decision. I read the post you're talking about, and I had only been listening to the Ham Radio 360 show for just a little bit before he took his hiatus back in the fall. I had just started listening to him. I just found the show. I listened to the Workbench. I've listened to a couple of episodes of the Field Radio podcast. They're all excellent shows. They all cover a different niche, in a different aspect of the hobby. So give them a listen. He's going to keep the old episodes out there, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's going to keep the past episodes out there, so you can go listen to the past episodes. But no, we wish Kale well, and hope that at some point in the future he decides he's at a point where he can come back to podcasts. He can get back into it. and I hope to work him someday on the radio. It's funny. The first time I listened to him, he was talking about where he is, and he lives now about 80 or 90 miles from where I grew up. So, even though we've never met, I've never spoken to him. I've just listened to him a few times. I feel a little bit of affinity because we're both from South Carolina. So
yeah,
originally. So anyway, hope he wish him well.
Absolutely.
In all of his future endeavors.
Yeah, and the stuff that he's gone to, I mean, between his kids and he's the EC for his county, or assistant EC for the county, and, working with Aries and races and all that good stuff. I mean, he's pretty busy. And then on top of that, running the his wife's business, I think. So all that is a lot to do. So, but anyways, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. I do want to mention before we leave, as y'all know, they're over the past 6 months or so, I've been making these signs, and my wife and I have decided that we are going to go into this full-blown side business of making things, making signs, making little desktop nameplates, eventually expand into other items. But we are working on that. I've made several of them. There's several pictures that you can find on our business website, which you can find at 2xc, the number 2, xcproducts.com. You can order a sign there. You can simply send us an email and tell us what you want, and we'll get back to you with a price and how long it's going to take and all that good stuff. The email you can send it to is sales@2xcproducts.com. So check those out. There will be a picture of one of them in the show notes, and then, like I said, you can go to the website and see all the others that I've made, all the mock-ups and stuff, ones that I haven't. And I'm constantly adding new things to that website, so check back frequently. Or if you just have an idea of stuff that you want. I just made one for a trooper that I work with, and he absolutely loved it. So check me out on that. If you want something for your ham shack, or you want something for you and your wife, something like that, those great anniversary gifts. I have ideas for stuff like that on there, so check that out. So I guess that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Ian, I want to thank you for coming on and enjoying you being my co-host.
Always. It's always a lot of fun. It's always a great time.
We're definitely going to have to work on the time frame, though, because it's going on almost an hour and a half. So we're definitely going to have to work on that hour cutoff. Because now my wife is sitting behind me like, come on, Curtis, let's go. So she's tapping the feet, right? Yeah, exactly. She's fixing to flip the lights on and off for me. So, but anyways, y'all, again, you can find the show notes of today's episode at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/97. I also want to give a shout out to all my new subscribers. I just topped 400 email subscribers this past week. So thank y'all for all. Yeah, thanks for all that subscribe to the email. If you want to do that, you can. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can go to the show notes at the very bottom. There's a link that you can fill out with your name and your email address. Click on the Sign Me Up button. You'll get an email from me with a link that you'll have to click on in order to confirm that it's actually you wanting to sign up. Or you can simply go to everythinghamradio.com/subscribe and do that same type form. So I guess that's pretty much about it. Check out some of the blogs I've been posting. I've been putting a whole lot more blogs than I have in recent. So if you're not an email subscriber, definitely check out the website. And Ian, thanks again. And until
my pleasure.
Yeah, until next time, y'all. This is K5CLM
and KM4IK.
Wishing y'all a great couple weeks. And until next time, 73, y'all.
73.